This is the John Brown Alliance, where we don't fear, we fight. I'm not going to talk about the Epstein files because I think there's enough people on YouTube right now talking about that. And there are other things that are going on besides that. But I do want to take a moment to remember and ask empathy for the woman who committed suicide, whose family is now on TV talking about this phenomenon of human trafficking. I want to make sure I am saying her name right. I may not be. It's Virginia Giuffre, I believe. As an individual who is a survivor of what could have turned into a colossal human trafficking event, I completely understand what her family's going through. What my family did not go through at that time, even though the person was never prosecuted and brought to justice, was the public shaming through this. I can't even put it into words. I think a lot is lost on this whole Epstein thing because everybody's concentrated on keeping it in the media and stating that if we keep it in the media, then it's going to bring down Trump. I honestly and truly, in my heart of hearts, do not believe that. I really don't. I think it is necessary that we don't let it die, but for a different reason than most people. And I'm going to leave that alone right now. What I would like to say is that we have a problem in society wherein people who are elected officials that claim to be pro-democracy ask us for money and support in elections every 4 years, 2 years, 6 years, whatever the case may be where you are from. And then when issues like this come up, they are not hair on fire and out in the streets. This is what we pay them for. Being a public servant does not mean you win an election and then you get carte blanche to do whatever the fuck you want, when you want. And you're entitled to vacations. And you're entitled to breaks. And you're entitled to not being asked questions. And you're entitled to not being held accountable. The definition of public service is self-explanatory. You do this job not because you want to, but because you have to make a change. And this is the difference between American society and the time of people like Martin Luther King and Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, John Brown. Because now it's all words and no action. It's all sizzle and no steak. And that's on both sides of the aisle. Now right now, this poor woman's family is appearing on TV begging someone to have compassion enough for their plight to not let this woman have suffered and died in vain. Crickets. Because both Democrats and Republicans are too afraid to open their mouths and be public servants. We are living in a society right now where people like me, who are not Christians, are behaving more Christian than people who claim they love the Bible and go to church every Sunday. I haven't been on the internet for a couple days because I've been out in the streets doing the work. Not what's going to get me elected, because I'm not running for office. Not what's going to get me famous on YouTube with a bunch of videos proving what I'm doing. I don't give two fucks who believes what I'm doing or does not believe it. Because the people that need to know I'm doing it are the people I affect on a daily basis. That's what public service is. You don't need accolades, newspapers, somebody coming out, you deserve the Nobel Peace Prize. You don't need things like that. You do it because it's the right thing to do. Now, what we have right now is a total abandon of morality in the United States. And I'm going to say on both sides. Because people who claim to be Democrats pick and choose certain battles based on how politically expedient it might be for their election. Heroes don't need to be elected. Heroes are born. Leaders are born. They are born. And we have born leaders out there. But because, excuse me, because our government has been so tainted by dark money, personality, cults, right wing, left wing, this, that. Who's paying you to support what? That we haven't had the transparency of knowing until now? Real leaders have not been able to come forward. Real leaders, like Jamie Raskin. Real leaders, like Mamdani. Real leaders, like Jasmine Crockett, Maxwell Frost, Robert Garcia. These people are not recognized right now as a catalyst of change because their voices are silenced by a chorus of non-doers, of paid politicians, plain and simple. So as a result, in 2025, we have a White House of Horrors in Washington, D.C., 15 minutes from where my family members sleep, is the most notorious, destructive, corrupt, disgusting, and demonic regime in the history of the world. I believe this surpasses even that of Adolf Hitler because it is clandestine, it is done undercover, and through propaganda that has in some ways influenced even civil rights leaders from the era of Martin Luther King not to support the rights of people being exterminated in Gaza right now because it is not politically expedient for them. And I'm talking about old school black leaders. And that's a damn shame. But hopefully this video will make them wake up and think about that. And you know who you are. I'm not going to name names yet. I'm going to wait for you to fuck up a few more times. This White House of Horrors is designing a society in which privileged may rape and kill whomever they wish. And the price for the crime is paid in full by the victim. You are seeing this happen right now with the January 6 people. and how they were let out of prison, out on American streets, many committing other crimes. However, they are solely responsible for the deaths, the disabilities, and the inability of other people who are involved as law enforcement to get jobs and move on. These people are out on our streets right now. Why? Because it's a reflection of our values. We might not have voted for Donald Trump, but when we sit here and see things like this and do nothing, these are our values. This is what America is. And all of us should remember that. So I'm going to move on to the topic. This took a little longer than I thought it would. But for the family of this young lady, I just want to say one last thing. Some of us aren't going to stop fighting for you. Hopefully you're somewhere better. I'm not a Christian. I don't know that. But we got your back. The John Brown Alliance has your back. So I want to bring you to the Gilded Age, which is what this podcast is supposed to be talking about. I don't know if many of you remember, but when Donald Trump made one of his speeches before he stole this last election by gerrymandering and other means that have been going on since time and continuum, he stated, "Welcome to America's new golden age, Gilded Age." Those are the two terms he used. And we're going to be richer and better, and we're going to be this and be that. Well, if you clicked on this podcast, you saw a picture of what the Gilded Age looked like for the average American. So welcome to the Gilded Age. Now, the problem with America is we don't know our history. So when these words were spoken, me and about 5 other people were paying attention. So we followed the money. The Gilded Age in the United States of America was wrought with the same things you're seeing today. Sacco and Vanzetti. People being picked up, for, that's a good example. People just being picked up under suspicion and renditioned. Union busting. You didn't have elections where your vote was private. You had one side of the street that was Republican and one side of the street that was Democrat, or whatever it was called back then. And you could come to the polls and see your boss on one side of the street or the other, and if you might have heard some kind of speech and you decided you were going to vote for this guy, you saw your boss on the other side of the street and you were like, hey, maybe I need to go over there and vote for that guy. And that was a major influence in voting. And that was one of the earliest forms of voter intimidation, which is why we hopefully evolved, which I'm saying we didn't, and we don't use those tactics anymore, and our votes are private. That's the way it's supposed to be. Now also, what I noticed about Donald Trump's Gilded Age is that during that same time that America's Gilded Age happened, the majority of the American public did not enjoy what the Gilded Age depicts in American history. They make it seem as if The Great Gatsby was everybody's life. that if you lived in New York City or any place like that, you were, drinking out of gold-plated goblets, and everything was fine. Your family was fed. Your kids went to the best schools. All of that. That's what the Gilded Age says in America. That's what makes immigrants want to come here, is seeing fake-ass films that depict these kinds of things. But for those who actually lived through it, or were children of those who lived through it, this was the time of J.P. Morgan, J.D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie. And yes, some of them did become philanthropists, but it was all about the greed. Everybody reconciles when they're about to die and they decide to give a bunch of shit away. That's all well and great. But the number of people that died to make your shit possible, those people are never remembered. Those people who couldn't afford food because they worked for a company or got laid off at a particular time so their kid couldn't go to college, these are the people that don't have generational wealth because of the Gilded Age, and people like J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, and Andrew Carnegie. So what we're witnessing right now with the same thing, anti-union, anti-speaking out, shut everybody up, tell what everybody voted for, shut down the news media, anybody that's anti-Trump, okay, is the Morganization of America. This is their Gilded Age, not yours. And that especially goes for MAGA people. Because unlike that Gilded Age, blue states, black people, Latinos, and Native Americans, and certain segments of society saw this coming and prepared. And we did warn you. And so did people in black media. But if you find yourself in a really precarious position to the point where you might lose everything, congratulations. Because you should have opened your fucking ears and shut your mouth. That's what you should have done. But I digress. Back to the Morganization of America. Right now you have Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Jeff Bezos, and all the same types of key players that took part in the Gilded Age. And what they did was strip Americans of their rights by race and discriminate against them to the point where many could not make a living. Then for those who could, they exploited into poverty. This is what's happening right now. Tariffs, raising prices, Doge, government workers being laid off. Excuse me. The fact that Joe Biden had a great plan for infrastructure and keeping people employed, union workers, all destroyed, all gone. Excuse me. Once again, I have an autoimmune condition, and I do talk most of the day. Let me make the comparison between their Gilded Age and ours. Once upon a time, there was a man who is going to be elected as the great American hero of the workers. His name was William Jennings Bryan. Well, back then, Andrew Carnegie, John D. Rockefeller, and JP Morgan were rivals. They were all, it was all about how can I get rich, how fast. We can add Vanderbilt and a lot of other people to this discussion. Well, instead of taking the candidate that was most likely to join Mr. William Jennings Bryan on the ticket, they decided that they had to buy themselves a president. And that president? William McKinley. Yes. Just like Donald Trump, William McKinley gets elected. Everybody's doing fine and great. Everything's fine and dandy. They have their Gilded Age, and this is why, if you had any family that were here in the United States, unlike Trump, I think, you don't have generational wealth, even if you're white. Because the plan was that certain people were going to have certain wealth so they could control the entire United States. That's called a plutocracy. Now, that being said, apparently, somewhere along the line, someone decided this wasn't a great idea. Those families, to this day, still benefit from this act of treason against the United States, buying the election of William McKinley. Still to this day. Now we are at that same point right now, that inflection point, where we need to decide if we're going to live the rest of our lives financing the golden age of Jeff Bezos, Donald Trump, Peter Thiel, and all the other greedy people that are coming after this money that has been stolen from us. Now that's unprecedented in and of itself. Even back then, they didn't have the audacity to seize government funds, steal it, and reallocate it right in the face of Congress. So these are different times. Not only that, we have a Supreme Court and a Congress that is allowing them to do this. This is unsustainable. And it's not unsustainable because I disagree with it or some podcast disagrees with it. It's unsustainable because under these conditions you will die. And you will die soon. And it will not be documented. And your story will not be told. Because the zone is flooded with everything deflecting away from what is happening to you as a person of color or a poor white person right now. And if you don't believe me, do your own genealogy and find out how many of your family members survived during the Spanish flu, during different plagues that took place during the United States, the history of the United States, the Great Depression, World War II rations. Do the math. It's stacked against you. And you just keep voting for it. Every single time. You keep voting for it. So welcome to the Gilded Age of Donald Trump. Enjoy.